Hey, and welcome back to Divulgence, everyone. Today, I have with me true crime reporter Roberta Glass. Hey, Roberta, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you again. Um, so, I know that obviously you report and research true crime, a lot of the bigger cases that you see all over the place in the media and whatnot. But before we get into specific cases or anything, let's dive into the main topic of the show, which is something that you've been working on for quite a few years, which is innocence fraud, right?
Yes.
So why don't we start by, can you tell me and the viewers and everyone, just break down what is innocence fraud, and maybe just give us a little bit of a background there before we start digging deeper.
Okay. Well, innocence fraud is, I would say, it's getting guilty murderers. It's usually done about 14 years after their conviction. It could be murderers. It could be sexual predators and murderers, any kind of criminal out of prison. About usually it happens about 14 years out of their after their conviction, and the motivation is twofold. One is an ideology motivation, in that they believe that our justice system is either just so systematically unfair, or that all these murderers are just little guys caught up in it, or they're just grifters who want to clean up in our civil courts, where they can sue for multi millions of dollars for their wrongful conviction that really wasn't wrongful. So they use the media. The media's often on board with this, because if you write about a wrongfully convicted killer, you're on a short list for awards. Also, it's people are just it's like crack cocaine to not just Americans, but internationally. Like, the Western world is in love with this story, and if you can make someone look innocent, either by false, like, pseudo documentaries or podcasts, it will bring you money. So that's how it's done. So there's two folds. There's the Hollywood side, and then there's actually like the legal side, where people are writing books. The Hollywood side, I'd say people are writing books, movies, podcasts, and then there's the actual legal side where they do it. And then they're also teaching it in our universities. So they're leading classes.
Really?
And
Okay.
sometimes we've had murderers like Adnan Syed and Marty Tankleff, two guilty murderers, in my opinion, that I've talked about on my podcast, are leading classes and having college students and sometimes graduate students. In the case of there's a very famous Northwestern case I'll get to in a second, just remind me. So they're leading their classes into investigating cases, they say, of innocence. So they go back to they try to get these killers out by hook or crook. There's a very famous case. There's a documentary about this that I encourage everyone to watch, called The Murder in the Park, where they got a very guilty Anthony Porter. He was on death row, out of prison. These Medill uh, journalism students at Northwestern, by going back to the crime scene had been redone. There's so many things wrong. They didn't talk to half the witnesses. Then they got the important witnesses to recant. That's another thing they do in innocence fraud cases. They just guilt the most, like, eyewitnesses. They guilt them to recant, to get someone out. Uh, so they got this Anthony Porter out by I won't ruin it for you, but by actually railroading and forcing a false confession out of an innocent man, called All Story Simon. And they both actually got out. But when Anthony Porter went to get his wrongful conviction money in civil court, the judge was like, "No thanks." He didn't get a dime. He's like, you did it, which is unusual. Usually they just roll over. I mean, in the civil courts, nobody knows about the case. It's not the
Right.
prosecutors on to other. They're just like, they get this very sort of whitewashed view of the case. Nobody knows about the case. They put their line on the court. We have a lower bar of evidence in our civil courts. You just have to get like 51% more likely than not to have happened. And they throw their line on the court. Sometimes, like with Ryan Ferguson, they go from court to court to court, getting turned down multiple times. They find one court that'll say yes, and then they get these multi-million-dollar payouts, which when it's written about it's written about with no skepticism. They're written about as innocent men who were wrongfully convicted. No skepticism in our press at all, and that's how they clean up with that stuff. But nobody asked, like, well, sometimes, like in the case of Ryan Ferguson, his co-killer was still in prison. They're like, well, this is a case of if he's wrongfully convicted, then his accomplice has to be wrongfully convicted too. But nobody asks like the important questions. It's just kind of presented to the public. They like to have, stage these scenes where the killer is getting out of prison and there's like jubilation. We had that with Adnan Syed, like a real Hollywood production of when they're getting out and they're
Stephen Avery
killer is crying and people are celebrating. That's really key with this movement, because people love the feel good story. They don't want to ask, like, well, what if they did it? Maybe they did it. Maybe there's a family of the victim who's really suffering. This is not good for. I mean, I don't know. I think you're familiar with the West Memphis Three case.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
They didn't even tell the victims' families that they were letting them out on an Alford plea in that case. I mean, that's another case I would consider innocence fraud. West Memphis Three, Marty Tankleff. Oh gosh, Richard Glossop. They have a campaign going on for him now. I mean, there's so many. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've investigated pretty much every massive claim of innocence that I could find. I haven't found one innocent person yet. I'm not saying that wrongful convictions don't happen, but of the big claims, of the big celebrated cases, I haven't found one case of real wrongful conviction yet. So
really, okay. So just to go through a few, you mentioned Ryan Ferguson. You feel that he had done it. West Memphis Three, I feel pretty similar with you on that. What about Amanda Knox?
Very guilty. Very guilty. I mean, there's so much. I was actually got fooled by that innocence fraud campaign because I was working at Oprah at the time, and I got a letter from the Friends of Amanda and this is just when it had happened. So it wasn't really like a famous case, but I got this letter like, "Dear Oprah," and I'm like the person who's reading it at Oprah magazine. Yeah. There's been this young woman in Italy, who's 20 years old, who's gotten arrested for killing her roommate, but it's all a big misunderstanding. And then she had to go back and get underwear because she had to buy underwear, and they used it against her when she was buying just like white underwear from dollar bins on the side of the road. And they said that this was a sign of her being like a sexually motivated crime or something. I was totally brought in by this letter, hook, line, and sinker. And the material in the US is so poor around that case. You'll hear about the double DNA knife, not so much anymore, which had Amanda. So this is the murder weapon that was found in her boyfriend's house with Amanda's DNA on the handle of the knife and Meredith Kircher's DNA on the blade. You'll hear about that. But you won't hear about all the mixed DNA that lit up under luminol, i.e. blood. If I don't put it that way, the Amanda Knox supporters will go crazy. It's mixed blood is what it is. But they'll say it's like mixed root vegetables. She rubbed root vegetables on her feet, and that's like what lit up the luminol. But it's mixed DNA, so mixed blood of her and Meredith all over the villa, especially in the room of Philomena's room. She had two other roommates, Philomena and Laura, and there's mixed DNA of Meredith and Amanda, mixed blood, in the room of the stage break-in, which is really significant, in the bathroom, hallway, and room of the stage break-in. Nobody will talk about that. To me, that was really compelling evidence when I heard of that, and all of Amanda Knox's consistent lying. So when she said, "Oh no, I was, just all night." She still doesn't have an alibi to this day. And she's a convicted liar.
She's kind of back in the media again more. I've seen more posts like, she's out with a boyfriend and she's getting more
married with
she's married now? Really?
Mm-hmm. It's a scary thought. The psychopathic Amanda Knox married with kids. Yeah, no, she's I'm like the last person who I think it's like me and maybe like a few other people who just keep on talking about this case, because a lot of other people have like long since moved on to other cases and stopped talking about it. But I continue to talk about it because Amanda Knox will never stop scripting off of it. It's now like her career. She's made millions off of her murder. I feel her murder of Meredith Kircher that she did with 2 other people. That's my opinion on the case, that she's very guilty. And, but I was totally brought in, and I thought, I followed it for years, just not having an opinion, not knowing, going back and forth, sometimes really supporting her. But there wasn't really good information in this country about that case for years and years and years. It's much more in Europe. They had much better reporting. So if you're getting bad information, of course you're going to, and Amanda Knox's, and to her credit, Amanda Knox's dad hired a PR agent. I always pronounce this wrong, but I guess I'll pronounce it wrong again. Gogarty Marriott. I think that's closer. For $1 million before he ever bought her a lawyer. So,
wow.
And he said it was the smartest thing they ever did. So they just propagandized $1 million worth of propaganda. They got experts, FBI people to come out and say this is a terrible injustice. Writers, anyone they could to talk about it. And then they got politicians. And so eventually what they did is that, so she was convicted, and then the conviction was affirmed, and then it was overturned, and then it was affirmed again, I believe, I hope I'm getting that right. And then it goes up to the Supreme Court, and they just throw out all the DNA evidence of Amanda and Raph, but all the evidence of Rudy Gude, the black man who took a fast track trial, that somehow is reliable. So all the evidence against the white defendants is not reliable, but the black defendants, same investigators, same lab, doesn't make any sense in that case. So they illegally threw out all the DNA. That's not the job of the Court of Cassation, is to start throwing out evidence. They're just really supposed to look at the case and see that it's done correctly. But they just had so much political pressure on them from America to somehow free this Amanda Knox that's how that worked. And she's walking around talking about her exoneration. Can I talk about her great exoneration just for a second? So that final court, the great exoneration of Amanda Knox that she likes to talk about. So that final court of cassation, after illegally throwing out all the DNA evidence, determined that she was there at the scene of the crime and that she washed Meredith Kircher's blood, the victim's blood, off of her hands, that it was a crime as done by multiple attackers. Strangely, Amanda Knox is not looking for the other real killers because she always says, oh, it was just Rudy Gude did it alone. But no court who's ever looked at all the evidence, who's ever looked at this case, is determined that this was a crime done by one person. There's so many signs of multiple attackers, and I could go through that. But so that's her great exoneration, that she was there at the scene of the crime, washed the victim's blood off her hands and feet too, not just her hands.
Right.
And that and that she wrongly accused her boss. So when her alibi, I sort of got started on this and I didn't finish it. It's a bad habit I have. But when her boyfriend pulled her alibi, that's when Amanda Knox falsely accused her black boss, who she thought would be a stand-in for Rudy Goudet because they were both African.
What do you mean by pulled her alibi? What do you mean by that?
So he was there. He broke down and he was talking. He was talking to the police, and they confronted him with some inconvenient facts. And he said, "Oh, you're right. My girlfriend Amanda told me to tell a bunch of lies, like, you know, that we were there all night." And he said, you know, and he said, "No, I you know, we weren't together." So then they went to Amanda and said, "Your boyfriend pulled your alibi." And that's when she said, my boss, Patrick Lumumba, who was very nice to her, ruined his whole life with this. This is why she's a convicted liar. And even with changes in laws in Italy, this lying slander conviction still stands for Amanda Knox. She said, you know, I was there and I was in the kitchen. I put my ears to block out Meredith's scream, which other witnesses heard a loud scream, piercing scream that night. It's a very important detail that she knew about the murder. And he did it, like, and then she wrote a note and she doubled down on that, but always in a way that she could have an out, like, "I'm kind of confused. I don't know. Maybe these events seem dreamlike." You know, she always was like always playing with the police, like, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen. Like, I don't want to fully commit to the story, but I'll write it. I'll say it again that my boss Patrick Lumumba did the crime, and he sat in jail for 2 weeks before he got out on his own alibi. So, you know, these progressive, you know, she's always going off about these progressive causes and, you know, empathy and, you know, all these things, and, you know, like painting herself in the best light and her authentic self and talking in these ways in these interviews. But she's never paid Patrick Lumumba the money she owes him, which was now with interest. She's never apologized to him. She's always blamed the police. She always blames the police and everyone else for her own actions. So she's pretty much very much the same personality. All these killers have the same personality: narcissistic, cruel, liars. It's like pretty much same personality. Same thing we saw with Damien Echols, right? Like,
right.
The police. It was the police. My terrible treatment in prison, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
And then it comes out.
Are people following this? Am I going too much? Is it too much?
No, this is great.
Going too fast. Okay.
All right. So moving on from Amanda Knox, what about the Menendez brothers? That being something that's come back. There's been the Netflix documentary. You know, obviously they've been in the news. They're being denied release, it seems like, at this point, unless there's been an update recently that I haven't seen. So what are your thoughts on that and the case, and also whether or not you feel it's a case of innocence fraud?
I never would have thought that would have become an innocence fraud case. I mean, they admit they did it. Okay. They admit they did it. Their defense has always been the abuse excuse, but there's never been any real evidence that they did it. They relied on this one cousin that died of a drug overdose, but then they said they had this undated letter to this cousin, but that cousin strangely was the one who visited them a lot, especially Eric Menendez in prison. So maybe one could see that he might have been tailoring his evidence, giving him a story to tell on the stand. There's a lot of I'm not going to go into super detail with the Menendez brothers. It was the case that got me interested in true crime because they had lived near me growing up. They had also been, I was a competitive swimmer. When I was younger, they were competitive swimmers. For some reason, I thought that maybe we had, been at the same swim meets. I don't know. I seem to like before they moved to, right? Maybe, I don't know. But same kind of age, same,
before they were famous.
I kind of, I just was like, I felt like I kind of understood this like demanding father. He was a demanding father. There weren't a lot of people who said a lot of nice things about him, but the evidence is so outrageous. The story that this new Menudo member says. So there's this one journalist, I really call him a propagandist, called Robert Rand. Doesn't like me very much, I don't think. Okay. Who has been propagandizing for the Menendez brothers for years and years and years and years and years, very close with the family. And he's been spinning these things. If you go back, he went on Megyn Kelly's show on NBC years ago and was like, I have this evidence and that evidence of a phone call of the roommate of Lyle Menendez at Princeton before he got kicked out for cheating. And Megyn was like, great. Megyn Kelly was like, great, come back on. We'd love to hear this tape. Never, so strangely, never came back. We've never heard this tape ever. This Menudo, I laughed. I had to laugh through the Menudo. Oh, the Menendez brothers supporters get so angry with me. But I did laugh through the affidavit. It makes no sense. Jose Menendez picked me up in a limousine and took me to his house when I was in New York doing a concert, and then, preyed on me at his home in Princeton, New Jersey. Why wouldn't he get a hotel? He's got to take you back to his wife and kids to prey on you in front of his wife and kids. It's so vague. It's odd and vague and not the odd language. I've been through it. I don't believe them. I don't believe that they were abused in that way. Do I believe that he was a hard father? Maybe it's even a terrible father, Jose Menendez. But they were full-grown adults who could have left, who decided not to leave because they wanted their parents' money. And they went on a huge spending spree after they shot their parents brutally. They planned that murder. It was a brutal murder. They shot their parents. And what we're really seeing in that case is the result of George Gascon, the legacy of George Gascon, and all these soft on crime prosecutors that were put in with Open Society, which is George Soros's Society's foundation money. They put aside a whole bunch of money to run former defense attorneys as district attorneys all over the country. So that what happened in Los Angeles is that you got a defense attorney, two defense attorneys talking to themselves in court, and there's nobody there representing the public or the victim. The concern of the prosecutor and the defense attorney is entirely the defendant and how they can help him. So it is a very dangerous thing that George Gascon did with the help of that Open Society Foundation money, is to really strategize and put all these defense attorneys with this kind of innocence fraud ideology, that they were going to prosecute the fewest amount of people, change the laws, get rid of things like gun enhancements. George Gascon got rid of the whole department that notified victims' families when their loved ones' killer came up for parole, to keep victims' families out of parole hearings, because there's such a powerful voice, so that they could get these killers out of prison even faster. I mean, they did everything they could. So the Menendez brothers is really like the last of George Gascon's legacy before he was, hugely defeated, hugely defeated on his, by Nathan Hochman on his way out. So that's one of the last things he did was work on releasing the Menendez brothers. It's sick. It's sick. And it's really been like a TikTok movement, much like Aaron Reed and other cases. They've really sold this on TikTok, gone back and done I love my favorite thing, because I watched those trials. I watched the first. I watched the first trial. The second trial wasn't broadcast, but I watched the first trial. But they said, like, oh, they were totally shut out. The second trial, they couldn't mention the abuse. That's not true. They were just limited what they could mention of the abuse, because it was so confusing. The first trial, it was like they were both like defendant and it was almost like a civil trial. They were like plaintiff and defendant at the same time. So they were complaining about their abuse and defending themselves at the same time. It was odd. But there's a lot of young women in that movement, and gay men who love the way they look, or the way they looked. They don't like the new. And Rosie O'Donnell. That's another aspect of Innocence Fraud. Rosie O'Donnell is talking to Lyle Menendez every night, she says.
Yes, okay. Oh, is that what, really?
And Kim Kardashian, who's a big
Kim Kardashian
of this Innocence Fraud
too. Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah, so they have their supporters, just like Adnan Syed and Amanda Knox, et cetera, et cetera. I've not seen one celebrity yet who's advocated for a victim's family member, murder victim's family member, on my 8 years of covering this. But they're happy to support a killer.
Just when you're talking about Kardashian and just celebrities, do you remember Rubin Carter?
Oh yeah,
Hurricane. They had Bob Dylan singing the song, all that. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, real quick? I mean, I'm not very familiar, but based on what I've seen, it's a good possibility he was framed. I mean, I don't know. Have you done any research?
No, I have done. Yeah, I can send you some stuff. It's very difficult, but yeah, I can send you some stuff. Yeah. No,
so he's a killer.
Bob Dylan, yeah, no, he's gotten caught in so many lies. Like there's lies from like his first book to his second book that like make no sense. Then there's like contradictions and lies in that. Bob Dylan went and met with him and has not sung that song since the 70s. So I think he had a change of heart, as a lot of people do when they talk to Rubin. He talks a good game, but then when you actually compare it to the facts of the case, I haven't been over the facts of that case in a long time. It's just that I remember the lights of his car were very specific. Everybody remembers old cars, the way we used to make old cars, the way we used to make cars, very specific kind of tail lights lit up. And then he was pulled over. So.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. We should maybe plan to do.
I can review it and get more specific for you, but I haven't been over the facts of that case. I'd never done an episode on that case. I've just researched it. There's a great website. There's a great website on it, and the actual lyrics to the song are totally untrue too. There's actually a good video. There are a couple videos on YouTube where they go through the lyrics of Hurricane and debunk it. So yeah.
All right, there's some meat on that bone for us to chew on. That sounds good.
Are people still interested in that case? I'm so shocked.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. It's just it just came to my mind. So maybe we can dig it out and get it.
Canadian students got him out. So right. My sister-in-law who passed away from breast cancer. I'm
sorry.
I just happen to think that Canadians are the most naive culture of people, the sweetest, nicest people. But there's this deep naivete that runs through the Canadian culture that it's both endearing and frustrating. That's what I find, like they're just very sweet, trusting people.
It gets me into trouble. Let's just say that.
You're in Canada? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I heard your accent. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in Ontario. Yeah. So
you know what I'm talking. Do you think that's unfair? Do you think it's unfair?
No. That's speaking from a personal view and then just extrapolating it. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty bang on. like I said, I get myself into trouble for being too trusting or too nice, and when things play out, it's like, damn, maybe I shouldn't have been so nice and trusting, which is too bad, but that's the world. That's the world we live in.
It's a kind of amazing, though. I mean, I don't know. Do you know the Trailer Park Boys? Do you know that show, the Trailer Park Boys, the Canadian show?
Of course. I've met them a couple times. I got to actually, when the very first time they came to town in Thunder Bay, they brought me on stage and we got to act out a scene. And oh my God, like I used to love the Trailer Park Boys. Oh my God. So yes, I know about those guys.
Yeah. So right. So when they came to New York for I think it was their stage show, same thing, right? Like probably the same thing you saw. They just put out a thing to all their like fans, like, we're gonna be at a bar. Nobody would do this, and it was just so Canadian. We're gonna be at a bar, come by, like come by and hang out. That's just not
for sure.
Oh my God,
for sure.
Like you're gonna get some crazies. You're gonna get some crazies there, especially with that show. So
that's what they're all about, though, right? So I mean, they probably.
I know, but it's just try to find an American version of that.
They're
you just won't find that. It's very, that's an endearing, sweet, non-consequential, unless they, hopefully they don't get hurt doing that. But aspect of it. That's what I mean, where it's like really endearing and sweet. But there's other aspects, like when they're getting involved in Hurricane Carter, and that guy, his background was so violent. His relationship with women was really violent. It's not someone you want to fool around with. And a lot of people dropped out of that of his supporters came and went because of his own horrible personality.
Right.
And there was a whole, we should talk about it, because there was a whole PR, like they really maligned the police officer in that movie. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Yes. I was just gonna say, like, it's
looked like a racist when he was like the most liberal left-wing police officer, sweet guy, everyone loved him, and they shut down. Oh, who was the actor in that? Help me out.
What's his name? Dan Hedaya.
Washington. They shut down his Oscar.
Oh, the main actor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they had an anti-Innocence Fraud PR campaign. They shut down Denzel's Oscar for that because it was so outrageous. Like, the things in that are so outrageous. Wow. I mean, anytime they're doing like just huge claims, like, well, why did you get convicted? Well, I wore black T-shirts, racism. Like they blame it on a big cause. Like, we know that life doesn't work like that, that these giant things like just sort of happen to you. I wore black T-shirts and I got arrested. Really? Like, I was an outsider. Really? Like, well, how does that hold up? Talking about the West Memphis Three. How does that hold up in a court of law? How do you charge someone? How do you do an entire 2 trials for wearing black T-shirts and show a jury? Excuse me, Your Honor, they listened to heavy metal music and wore black T-shirts, and this story. And the jury, 2 juries voted to convict. And then every appeals court held it up after that. Really?
But no, it's satanic panic, right?
Right, satanic panic. How does that work even? He's a Satanist. That was the funniest thing to watch. When you look at people like our friend William Ramsey, who was at the forefront of this, Ed Opperman, it was the whole reason I talk about, this subject, is because I was totally fooled by the West Memphis Three with those documentaries. I don't know. Were you one of the early people who thought they were guilty? Or
I was still pretty young around that time. So my first introduction to them was actually the movie. It seems like there's always a movie, right? And and then after the movie is when I started to do some research, and that's pretty much how I looked into bumped into William Ramsey's stuff. So, yeah, but again, like the movie just, Hollywood gets involved, and
They said that. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Now, the documentary filmmakers, Sinofsky, and who's the other one that I'm forgetting? Sinofsky and, the guy who's done like a zillion of these. You're going to tell me in a second, because I'm having a morning of name blockage. I can see his face in my head.
Sorry, these are the directors of the...
Yeah, of the Paradise Lost documentaries. They said they took one look at Damien Echols and knew they were...
Joe Berlinger.
Excuse me. Joe Berlinger, thank you. Knew they were innocent. That's some...
Fuck off.
I mean, that's some heavy investigative journalism right there. I just looked at them. They looked innocent to me. Yeah, sounds good. But I mean, they know that, that that's the money-making way to go, is to wrongful conviction. You can go a million different ways. You're only, the guilty side, you're stuck with the facts of the case that never change. But the innocent side can keep grifting forever, keep going off in a zillion different directions. Go from one grieving stepfather to the next grieving stepfather, to side players, to the real minutia of the case that really isn't important. Just go off on, different tiny little details, and tiny side players, and say that they were involved. So yeah, they can keep grifting off the story for forever. So anyway, but with what was I say about the early people in the West Memphis Three got such pushback for saying that Damien Echols was a Satanist. They would just say, "Oh, you religious types," because both of them Christians. You're just satanic panic derangement. Satanic panic derangement syndrome. That wasn't really a thing, but that's basically what they were saying. They would laugh at him. Yeah, he's a werewolf too. Blah blah blah. You guys are crazy. And then he's into Wicca. He's not a Satanist. And then he gets out of prison on an Alford plea, which is a guilty plea, Damien Echols, and he has done nothing but written a book about Satanism, art shows dedicated to Satanism, pictures at Crowley's doorstep. I mean, not everything he's done in his life since being released has been totally about the cult. He's dedicated they don't deny it anymore. Now it's just, now they've changed strategies. So now it's not relevant. How's the chat doing? Have we lost everybody?
No. I think we're going at a perfect pace.
Okay. I haven't lost everybody.
So what about another one that, there's documentaries, it's been big in the news and all that. What about Stephen Avery making a murderer? So there were the two cases, right? He was put in, he got out, and then they put him in again on a different crime, and now they're trying to get him out. So do you think he did both crimes? Do you think he did? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's interesting because the documentaries do a good job of that, painting a whole different picture.
Yeah. Well, that first crime, they call it, I don't want to be, I'm going to use sort of YouTube friendly language. Maybe I don't have to, but I just, for, the sake of your show. So they say it was, Penny Bernstein was raped, but she was really attacked, is more like it. And they, both that alternative suspect that they ended up blaming it on, that they've never pressed any charges, that's a very suspicious thing, where they'll bring up another name and no charges will ever come on the other person. It'll just sort of hang there, like the West Memphis Three did with the stepfathers. especially the second stepfather. They'll just like let it hang there. And because they know they're not serious. It's just a PR kind of stunt. They did that with Stephen Avery. That was always, I'm trying to think of his name right now. I'm having a real name blockage this morning. Who was the one that they blame? I can see his face in my head, the alternate suspect in that case. That was his on trial. That was his alternate suspect, always. Thank you. Thank you. I need some help this morning. I'm still drinking my coffee.
Sorry, Bobby Dassey?
No. The one they blamed it on, they blamed the grape of Penny Bernstein on, or the attack of Penny Bernstein on. And they say, oh no, they've always made the evidence like much more suspicious. The only people that really backed up his alibi were his family, and we know how they roll. They protect their own.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden that hair shows up, right? And this is when DNA technology. I've had the prosecutor on, Ken Kratz, multiple times on my show to talk about it, and even talk about his. So all of a sudden that hair shows up, right? And they test it, and it's strangely the alternate suspect that he used at his trial, with the root on it, a pubic hair. So she wasn't attacked in a way where he ever had his pants down. So where did that pubic hair come from? With the root on it. Right. And it was never investigated. So we know that alternative suspect, I'm going to sound a little bit tinfoil hatty, but he was writing the Innocence Project and trying to get out of his grape cases using them, the Wisconsin Innocence Project. So all they would have had to do is throw it in his file. That's my feeling on it.
Huh. Wow.
I think there was manipulation, and then that made the Wisconsin Innocence Project. That made them a lot of money and a lot of attention, and got Stephen Avery out. Why do you think he's like constantly wants to test DNA when he knows all the evidence points to him? Why is he so confident DNA will? Because it got him out before. He did it before, and it got him out before. That's my theory on it. I mean, I've gone into much more detail. I mean, these kind of like come and go from my mind, those extreme details of these cases, but I'm not saying that these wrongful convictions don't happen. I think there's like Michael Madsen, California. There's like, I hope I'm getting his last name correctly, but there are cases of real wrongful conviction, but not of these real big celebrated cases. I have not found. So they use that to grift and just make up a story for his murder of Teresa Hallback, which all the evidence, I mean, you have to say that all the evidence points to him. And that whole documentary has just crumbled as far as all the claims in it have crumbled. Has anything really held up pointing to anyone else in that case? And Dassey, if you look at the whole interview and that, he's, I think, even scarier to me than Avery.
Yeah.
Because like Avery's like your run-of-the-mill violent child and woman predator, killer. He said he was going to get back at women. He was making like drawing pictures of dungeons when he was in prison and torture dungeons, and said he was going to get back at women when he got out for putting him in prison. And he did. The first chance he got. He was only out for like a month. And how long was he out for? Just like not even a year, right? Before he killed Teresa Hallback.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I believe it was less than a year.
Less than a year. So yeah. He's a dangerous predator, and I hope he never gets out. I've interviewed his ex-fiancée, Lynn Hartman, and that's a really fascinating interview.
Okay.
Wow. I'll encourage people to listen to it. But she got in a lot of trouble for talking because the Making a Murderer people were very angry that she was messing with their money that they were making from from the second documentary and threatened to sue her for breach of contract. So they know that there's so much money in these Innocence Fraud documentaries, and it's so anybody who goes against the narrative is going to be public enemy number one. But she realized that he was, he admitted things to her that she was a diehard supporter who made her think that he did it. So you can listen to my interview with her.
Cool. Yeah,
I think it's like, great. Yeah, it's a really good. Yeah, it's a good interview. And I've interviewed Ken Kratz more than once. He's been on my show on a live stream talking about Karen Reed. But I've had 2 taped interviews with him. So yeah. And he's talked about that, his suspicions about that hair. So it's not my theory. It's his suspicions. It doesn't make any sense that it has the root on it, which is really very rare that a hair has a root on it. But at that time, the only way you could test DNA, it had to have the bulb on it. Now our DNA testing has come further. But strangely, there's like this perfect, pubic hair with a root on it. Where did that come from? Like perfect. And it goes to Gregory Allen. There you go. Gregory Allen.
Oh, Gregory Allen.
The suspect's name I was trying to think of. Right. It's matching Gregory Allen, but that was always his alternative suspect. Sorry, I can get talking. I'm sorry. Am I talking too much? I can get talking on this subject.
Not what about you were mentioning before Adnan Syed? That was very popular with the Serial podcast. Years later, an HBO documentary came out as well. So there's been a lot of media surrounding that case. Thoughts on that? Was he? You obviously
my advice. My advice to your audience is go to the transcripts. If they're not releasing the transcripts, if they're hiding the transcripts, there's always a reason why. Go find the transcripts. The truth is always in the original trial transcripts. Find them. If you can't find the trial transcripts, if they're really hidden, look for the appeal documents from the state and the defense. Look at both sides. So don't just look at one side. Look at both sides. Look at the arguments from the state and the arguments from the defense, and then make up your mind. But you will not find the whole story in these podcasts. They left so much out in Serial to try to make it an issue of doubt. I mean, starting off on the idea that it was just an ordinary day. There were so many things not ordinary about the day Hae-Min Lee went missing. First of all, she went missing. Your ex-girlfriend goes missing. So, I mean, the fact that Adnan Syed had this temporary amnesia that he, or like a sudden onset amnesia or viral amnesia or some kind of amnesia that he just got should have really set off alarm bells. But Sarah Koenig comes from this ideology where she felt, I believe, that 20 years, they really want to make our prison system like Europe, where nobody does. And John Fetterman, who's the governor of Pennsylvania, the senator in Pennsylvania, really wants to eliminate life without parole for everyone. So we don't give life sentences anymore and cap them off at 20 years like Europe does. Nobody does like more than 20 or 30 years for even the most heinous crimes in Europe. So they want to make our system more like that. So Adnan Syed at that time, what had he done? 16, 17 years, something like that. They felt like that's enough for strangling Hae-Min Lee to death with his, as he says, his own bare hands. They felt that was enough. So it's not that I feel that Sarah Koenig, who made Serial, thought he was innocent or had doubt. She just wanted him out. They believe this kind of what's called brain overclaim syndrome, this idea that their brains aren't fully developed, that they're not responsible for their own behavior because they're too young, like that they just like, or don't judge them for the worst mistake they've ever made, like plotting out this crime to the detail giving your friend Jay Wilds your cell phone, your car, is just some kind of mistake that you stumble upon, like whoops, like falling or losing your keys or something. Don't judge them for the worst mistake they've ever made. Kim Kardashian says that. They believe that they're just little guys caught up in the system and that the real killer is the state. And this ties in with, I mean, the state kills people via the death penalty, which is very, very different, but they consider like the awesome power of the state. These are little guys and they will make these things also to get rich, and they're dark personalities themselves, a lot of these journalists and filmmakers. So they'll side up to advance themselves. They will promote the innocence of a very guilty killer and re-victimize the victim's family in a way that, they don't really recover from. First they get victimized by the murderer, and or get sentenced to a life sentence of grief by the killer. And then they're re-victimized by these public campaigns for their loved one's killer that makes the loved one, their loved one totally ghosts their loved one and makes the killer the victim. And the victim is forgotten altogether. It's really a sick enterprise. So yeah, when he got out, Adnan Syed, I interviewed the Heyman Lee's family's lawyer. The way that they got him out is very much on the back of the DA. She was leaving on charged with fraud charges, which eventually she got convicted of. So they went to her in secret, and the judge in secret, all met in secret. It's called an in-camera meeting, which sounds like the opposite of what it is. They all meet in secret. There's no record of it. That's
weird.
Isn't that weird?
That's a weird term, yeah.
And they all agreed to release Adnan Syed based on really ridiculous evidence. One of the pieces of evidence was the DNA on Heyman Lee's shoes. So that's the victim's shoes, not on her feet even, but the shoes in the back of her car. And one of the things you do when you take a forensic class is you test the bottom of your shoes to see how incredible it is that you pick up so much DNA, that there's DNA everywhere. And so they can keep going forever on that DNA that she's picked up walking around on the soles of her shoes. The other piece of DNA was a new suspect, which is Adnan Syed's mentor's wife talking about Adnan Syed harassing Heyman Lee before the murder. So one of the new suspects that they released Adnan Syed on was Adnan Syed himself. It would be hilarious if it weren't so sad for the Lee family and for justice and fairness and in general. I mean, it's just outrageous. And the reason that conviction got reinstated and he's still a convicted murderer and wasn't overturned is because that they wrote Heyman Lee's brother an email and said, here's the Zoom link. They didn't tell him that they were letting out Adnan Syed, and he was always used to the DA's looking after his and his family's interests, the victim's interests. But now it's this new open society foundation, soft on crime DA, whose total interest is with Adnan Syed and his family, that he said, you can come on, we're going to have a hearing and you can show up on Zoom if you wanted. And when he finally got wind of what it was, he was in California. He couldn't get there in time, get a ticket in time. And so it was considered a huge violation of victims' rights, the way that the judge conspired with the prosecutor, who's really like a defense attorney. And the actual documents that released him were written by the Innocence Project, the kids at I think, that's my theory, the kids at the Innocence Project class, because it's so poorly written and oddly written, the document that of all these new suspects and stuff they used to get him out, that the DA used to vacate his conviction. So his conviction was reinstated, but they gave him time served. So he's now a convicted murderer teaching kids at Georgetown University next to Marty Tankleff, whose convictions were overturned on technicalities for killing his adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff. When Cuomo decided not to recharge Tankleff, he said, Tankleff, no way should be considered innocent and deserves no money. That didn't stop him from getting, I think, 13.3 million, something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
He sued everybody. And now he's teaching, and he also represented Keith Raniere, the Nexium cult guru. He was his lawyer. So, on his appeal. So, I mean, he's done nothing but he loves the system and loves to get over on the system that got him. He spent his time getting all the people that got him and manipulating the legal system. He said when he was in prison, he told his prison mates, I'm going to be just like Klaus von Bülow. I'm going to get out. There's going to be no evidence against me. I put the gloves that I wore when I stabbed my father and mother to death in the gas can, because gas eats up leather gloves very nicely, and there'll be no evidence left that they can get me on. And I'm gonna have fun, son, and women. I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna get out and be rich. And he's right. I mean, he predicted it correctly. He used the same PR agent the West Memphis Three used, Lonnie Surrey, when he was in prison, to spin the media. And that was a big part of why they chose not to retry him. Also because the laws had changed and they could only retry him on the murder of his father, not his mother, Arlene. So, yeah. It's amazing, right?
Yeah,
it's an amazing grift.
Yeah. Absolutely it is.
I mean, it's kind of like a game. Anytime I hear like these PR campaigns for killers, I say, what are they leaving out? And I go to the original documents, whatever I can find online of the original trial documents, and find out all the stuff that they're leaving out. And the stuff that they're leaving out is huge. Co-defendants, confessions, it's incredible. Eyewitnesses, so much stuff. Oh, actual items of clothes that they wore during the crime, the murder weapon in their home. So the Innocence Project will come out with like 10 things you should know about a case, but they're leaving out like the really serious evidence against. And they're sometimes they take a kernel of something and either exaggerate it or don't give you like the full context of it, or like for example, there's just a case I was investigating of a guy on death row, and they said the main witness against him lied on the stand to get the reward, but he sued for a Brady violation. It was shown that this woman knew nothing about this reward, that the prosecutor 3 years after his trial applied to get this $5,000 for this woman, at 3 years after the trial, and she knew nothing about it at the time. So it's a little odd that she would lie on the stand in all this incredible detail that brought in the details of the co-defendants and the convicted killer for this measly $5,000, but they're going around and they're selling people on it.
Lots of grifting, eh? There's a lot of
it's a big
lots of money flying around in a lot of these cases. Like, what about the Tiger King case? Do you look into that one at all?
I don't know a lot of that. I love animals. I'm a big cat lover. If anybody who's listened to me knows, I had a hard time watching that because just of the abuse of animals, I find very difficult. And I know it doesn't make any sense that I cover all these murderers. And I just had a hard time watching that. I really don't like people that keep exotic animals. Um, I find them very narcissistic, and I didn't I wasn't yeah, I had a hard time with that.
Yeah.
The Tiger King. I know there. I liked actually, strangely, I liked the film he made. I think this is the same filmmaker. Correct me if I'm wrong. Who did a film about women who keep monkeys.
Oh, I don't know.
I like that. It was called Monkey Love. I thought that was actually a more. It was like a portrait of narcissism of these women who keep monkeys, and they're just the cost that nobody can keep up with these costs. They're really cute when they're little, and then they get to be enormous, and just the cost of keeping them. And they're so smart, and they get, and sometimes they get very aggressive. Like the woman, do you remember the case of the woman who kept that monkey, that chimpanzee, and it attacked her neighbor brutally, and she had to have a face transplant?
Okay, that sounds very
Charlotte,
familiar.
and she didn't learn her lesson. She secretly adopted a chimp after this whole thing happened. After she was feeding it all sorts of different pills to keep it docile,
Oh my God.
and so that they had to kill it. That's how they all end, these chimp stories, with these, when you keep a chimp for too long, when they grow up and they get strong and go through puberty, and don't have enough um, stimulation, and are living an unnatural life where because they're animals and they're not people. They don't, strangely, get a lot of satisfaction for being dressed up like human beings, and
Yeah.
treated like
Yeah.
babies. Um, so she secretly adopted a chimp before she passed on, but she kept it in secret.
Oh God.
I mean, she didn't learn her lesson. I mean, that woman.
Yeah, I mean, I love animals as well. I have a dog and a cat in the house, and I'm personally though, my thing is turtles. I love turtles, tortoises. I have two turtles and a tortoise, and like, as someone who loves animals and loves my animals, it's like I know that they're going to grow bigger and bigger over time. So I know that I'm going to have to accommodate that. There'll be costs involved. So I need to know that and understand that, and know how to properly take care of them after they grow up. But yeah, a lot of these people that are buying these exotic animals, even people that just own regular animals, it seems a lot of people they don't know how to take care of them properly, or don't want to take care of them properly. And it's like, well, what were you thinking when you bought the animal? um,
Right. They don't want to put in the time to train a dog or train a, whatever. It takes time. So what do you think the difference between people who keep turtles, because they're really amazing turtles. They're like this
mm,
they're like little dinosaurs or something.
love them.
They're kind of amazing. I grew up in the country, so I just
Okay.
remember it's really uh, great detail, getting very close to, just they were always sweet, or picking them up in the middle of the road and making sure
Help
that
them
they're,
along, yeah.
yeah, helping them along. What do you think the difference is of people who keep turtles is the difference between people who keep dogs or cats or something?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Maybe
Are
it
they more
had,
introverted, or
you know what, I don't know. It's much more rare. It's much more rare to find people with turtles, especially in this city. um, I
well,
mean,
they're
there's
not
no.
soft and cuddly? You can't like
Right.
cuddle with a turtle.
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
like, I guess a tortoise you kind of can, because they're dry. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. Um, but I mean, even though I don't, I mean, I could still pick them up and take them for walks and bring them outside and all that. But I mean, I just get so much joy out of just watching them, and they help me calm down and they relax my mind. And um, but yeah, as for differences in the people that own them, I mean, I'm not 100% sure. Um, I mean, I do know what's his name, Owen Schroyer from who used to be on InfoWars. He has a turtle. I know he has a turtle, and I mean, I don't think he's very introverted, but yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I'm not 100%.
They're amazing. They're amazing, but it just doesn't seem very rewarding to actually. I don't know. For my view of a cat and dog lover.
Oh my god, it's so rewarding. Like even just feeding them every day is rewarding, because especially the tortoises, because instead of just, here you plop down a plate of food for the dog or the cat and they eat it up, it's like you want to watch them eat it because it's just so cute, and
they're very cute when they eat.
Oh my god, they're cute when they do everything, pretty much. That's one thing I love about them.
They're amazing looking, I'll say that. Yeah. They're incredible looking. Yeah, just the whole, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're very graceful, very calm, usually.
I don't know. What did you think of Tiger King? Did you, were you on the Free Tiger King bandwagon?
Not necessarily. I mean, I did think like maybe there was something there, but just like any Netflix documentary, there's always stuff left out, right? I did interview John Phillips, his current attorney. I kind of would like to talk to him again to know what's going on, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like he pissed a lot of people off who could have had a hand in making sure that he got a guilty verdict. But I mean, kind of like you were saying, don't blame someone for their worst mistake or whatever. Well, watching this Tiger King show, you see a whole melange of characters that are, into everything like drugs, drug dealing, extortion, abusing animals, probably sex crimes, maybe, probably different frauds, all sort of different.
His relationship with that was a red flag to me. With that young boy who ended it all was a big red flag to me.
He shot the guy that accidentally shot himself in the head.
Was it accidental for some reason? I haven't seen it in a long time.
I believe it was the way that's how they portrayed it, and because apparently he was just playing around with a gun and he didn't know it was loaded. He was probably really high, so that doesn't help.
But I mean that relationship when you're with anyone with any kind of huge age difference, that's a big red flag of a power and control, coercive control. It's just, I know people are going to say my uncle married my blah blah blah, and there was a 30-year age difference, and they had a great. Maybe so. I just don't really believe. I believe there's an element there. It's just not a fair relationship to the younger person. There's always an element of power and control that you have over someone when there's such a big age difference. So, yeah, I think that was a big red flag to me.
Yeah, and
what I know about abuse with people who look for younger people, like
right. And yeah, there seemed to be signs pointing to maybe this kid didn't necessarily want to be in the relationship, or maybe was conflicted with his own sexuality and he's still growing up and developing too, I'm sure, right? He was pretty young,
right.
So,
and the kind of financial security he could offer someone like that, it's really just not equal, right? And drugs, it's not equal. Hey, have you seen the letter that Woody Allen wrote Epstein that's come out? Have you seen that?
No, is that recently?
I have a scoop for you on that. I find really interesting about. So, my dad was a writer, and he was friends with Woody Allen when he was making, really early on, like when he was making Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex and Take the Money and Run. They would go out to lunch together, and he would tell my dad, class is for your friends and family. That was his advice, which I think is
ironic. Sorry, what is it? What was that?
Class, being classy.
Yep.
Your classy behavior, you save it for your friends and family. which I find ironic, the way that he married Sun Yi. And I also have a connection because I was very close with Dory Previn, who was married to Andre Previn. She was like a mentor of mine when I was growing up. And Mia Farrow stole Andre from her and then stole her style, the way she dressed, the way she decorated. Dory Previn, there's a documentary that's fantastic. I hope everybody sees it. I hope it gets, I just was shown here in New York for like one day or a couple days. It was actually one day in a film festival. But she's the writer. She wrote the theme to The Valley of the Dolls. Her name's Dory Previn. She passed on, I think in 2000 February, Valentine's Day, 2012. But she was a brilliant, brilliant, troubled woman, and a very prolific songwriter. And Mia Farrow, she was married to Andre Previn, and Mia Farrow then was friends with Dory and Andre, and then stole Andre from her and married him and adopted kids with him. So, and Andre Previn said to Dory, as crazy as you were, because Dory was famously crazy. She was very out about her problems with mental illness, and she wrote about her times in mental hospitals. He said, as crazy as you were nothing compared to how crazy Mia Farrow was. So when Mia Farrow started dating Woody Allen, I would hear things about, the relationship from Dory, et cetera, et cetera. And Woody Allen used Dory Previn's record as his defense and said, oh, Mia Farrow, because he knew that Mia Farrow stole the way Dory dressed, stole the way she decorated from her, really stole her aesthetic. And she said, oh, she made up this story and she based it on Dory Previn's autobiographical song. And that was his defense. One of his defenses. It was stupid. And I actually kind of believed that growing up. But then I looked at the evidence against Woody Allen, where there's they said to him, have you ever been up in an attic? And he was like, no, never. Because Dory Previn wrote a song with my daddy in the attic, and he plays his clarinet when I despair. And Woody Allen played the clarinet. And Woody Allen said, look, see, Mia Farrow just got this from Dory's song, it never happened. But we happened to know that there was babysitters that day with Dylan who knew that they were missing. He said, I never went into the attic. I would never go there. I'm claustrophobic. And then they found his hair on a painting in the attic. They're like, what's your hair doing in the attic of this painting? And he's like, well, maybe I did just poke my head around. So what am I going to say about this letter? I just find it very interesting. We know that psychopaths talk about food a lot. The entire letter is all about food and how he served his guests food. And I have a book inscribed to my dad from Woody Allen, where he's like, to my dad's name, a great writer, but a terrible orderer of food. Three, what do you call it? 3 appetizers, ? Exclamation point, Woody, something like that. I can't say it's exact, but that's the gist of how it's signed. But I mean, it's all about food, this thing. I mean, how much more obsessive you can read it to your audience. It's all about food. And we know that psychopaths talk about food more than any other subject. I mean, it's just bizarre. Food and sex.
Interesting. It's like George Costanza, food and sex. Wow.
I mean, isn't that the weirdest letter?
It is. Yeah.
And that is the signature.
Wow. Interesting.
He's like, I brought my wife, and he's talking about Sun Yi there too.
Yeah.
It's like, I brought my wife and you've seen pictures. You've seen that famous picture where they're walking in New York, Sun Yi, Epstein, and Woody Allen. So, growing up, I really thought that Woody Allen was unfairly, because I just loved Dory so much. And and I knew how crazy Mia Farrow was.
Right.
But I've come to the conclusion that pleases no one, which is that they're both very sick, and I think that Woody Allen did it, and that Mia Farrow is very sick, and I don't think either one of them are good parents. Seems that, like, in that case, you have to say that either Mia Farrow is wonderful and like a Saint Teresa. I think there's something very sick when these celebrities adopt all these children. There's something very wrong with that. Like, if they adopted as many dogs as they did children, we'd say they were a hoarder. But if they adopt kids and they're rich, we go, oh, they're amazing.
They're amazing.
Angelina Jolie is incredible, right?
There you go.
So I just happen to think she's and know that she's not a well person, but I don't think either is Woody Allen. I thought I don't know. Did you watch the documentary?
Which one are you referring to?
The HBO documentary, the
one that came out
Allen versus Farrow
a couple years ago, Farrow versus Allen or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, Ooh, it was a while back, but yes, I did. Yeah, I think for this, in this case, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of smoke here.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just think the way that he got with, he doesn't see anything wrong with the way he preyed on Sunyi. I mean,
yeah, definitely a sense of entitlement and like, what, there's nothing wrong with this, and stop making. There's anything wrong.
And you could do like I could do like 5 episodes or at least a couple episodes on just his interview with 60 Minutes, I think it was.
Okay.
He never really denies it outright. He always says, like, why would I pick this time to be a child molester? We're not saying that you just got caught. We're not saying that you just like, you know what I mean? You just got caught. We don't know if you've molested children before this or after this. You just got caught this time. We don't know your history. Why would I choose this time when I'm in a contentious blah blah blah? I mean, like, I love when this is something that criminals do. They ask questions. Why would I do it? Why would I do it? No, you tell us why you would do it. We don't know. We just know the evidence goes to you. We don't know all the motivations, and they know that we don't know all the motivations or the mechanics of it, like with Amanda Knox. Like, I don't know exactly. I know the prosecutors had a theory because of, certain pieces of evidence and lack of defensive wounds, and Amanda Knox's size shoe print in Meredith Kercher's blood on her pillow, and her women's-sized fingerprints, bruises on Meredith Kercher's arm, that there was a woman strangely around the size of Amanda Knox at the scene of the crime, and other things, but and Amanda's DNA, and Amanda Knox was bleeding at the same time as Meredith Kercher. But we don't know exactly how it happened. We don't know exactly why it happened, but they turn it around on us to fill in things that we just couldn't know. We just couldn't know all the motivations, all the little tiny details, if they're not in the public domain or they weren't discovered. We can't know it.
All right, well, let's get into Karen Reed now for a little bit.
We've been talking for I've given you a long time. Oh my Lord, right? We've been going for a long time. Oh no, not that long. Oh, just an hour. Okay.
Is that okay?
Reed? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's my day off.
Beautiful. Okay, so sorry, 1 sec. I just unplugged my.
It's the turtle. Turtle's unplugging things.
My bad. Yeah. My freaking turtle. Yeah, they're not. I mean, they're not big enough yet to where I can. To where I can let them run around the house yet, but they're getting there. They're getting there. Okay,
yeah, I'm gonna piss everybody off. So I'm gonna piss the Woody Allen supporters off with that opinion, and the Mia Farrow supporters. There's very few of us who go, they're both crazy. They're both crazy and shouldn't be around children. Both of them. Like, oh.
There we go.
Have you,
Sorry about that.
have you ever seen the list of the way that Mia Farrow adopted kids, all her adoptions?
No.
Oh,
No,
it's
I don't
crazy. I
know.
have it on my Facebook. You can go to my Facebook. I made a list because I had to, for when I was doing an episode, I think with William Ramsey, like I had to make a list. It was like adopted this, had this kid, adopted this kid, adopted this kid, and two of them have died, in
Oh.
one, one ended it all and one of illness, they haven't flourished. And there's a great book by the nanny that I read, and how she treated her adopted children different than, her biological. Did she just have that one child, or did she have more than that one biological child with Woody, who has uncovered the Weinstein stuff?
Oh, it's
So brilliant, who seemed to have Woody Allen's high IQ.
I just look in here. It says 3 of her
Ronan,
children died.
3 of her children. Yeah, she treats them
Wow.
very differently than her adopted Vietnamese children. And disturbing. I as someone who grew up, like, I don't think any of these actors, directors should have kids. Anyone involved in Hollywood should have kids. They're too narcissistic. I take that position.
So there's Ronan Farrow. Sorry to interrupt. Dylan O'Sullivan Farrow and Moses Farrow.
That's right. No. Isn't Moses adopted?
Or is it Tam Farrow? Is it Tam Farrow?
No, that's adopted. Okay. Is Ronan her only real, or didn't she have twins with Andre? Or did she adopt twins with Andre?
So we got Farrow has 14 children, 4 biological, 10 adopted.
Okay. And then she changed all their names, which is really disturbing after the Woody Allen Sunyi thing. She changed their first names. So that's why it's also confusing.
So Ronan Farrow adopted, and this is adopted. Oh, geez, I don't know. I don't know. They have so many children.
Yeah, right. Isn't it shocking when you actually see it written down?
Through it, yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah.
There's a list of children here. 5 children, including Ronan Farrow, Moses Farrow. Adopted. Moses is adopted, though. Yeah, I'm not finding it on.
I think Ronan is her only. That's I think I may be wrong on that.
So Dylan also is Dylan adopted too?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe it is just Ronan. Oh. Wow. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what that all happens with that.
And his original name was Satchel, after Satchel Paige when he was born, and so then he changed it to Ronan after the whole. They all changed their names, which Dory Previn said to me at the time. Now the kids have nothing, meaning not even their name after.
Now they all go. Now celebrities, now celebrity children, they all go trans too. So that's something to watch out for.
Yeah, I've been talking about that issue from a feminist kind of. I mean, I don't know. I don't even consider myself a feminist, but for lack of a better word, from a feminist perspective, since 2016, I was like, where were all these people in 2016? It was so controversial. If you change the name, like the legal meaning of women to include men, it's going to be very bad for women. And we saw it, the consequences in America. It was very, very bad for women. We were losing our scholarships. Title IX got totally turned on. It's totally destroyed. And we knew it was going to go that way. And I was being, lectured that I was a terrible person and I wasn't compassionate enough. But, I had gone to Sarah Lawrence with like one of the first, with a trans guy, a guy who, we had a trans student, it was a friend of mine. But the difference back then was that we understood that trans meant that that he was biologically male. He wasn't asking me to see him as femaleness as the same thing as biological women. So that was very different, that was very different when they started saying that trans women are women. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense, and you wouldn't even have to be trans.
Yeah.
If they were really women, they wouldn't have to be trans, right? So it doesn't really even make any sense. And the whole sterilizing of children, it's very, but I was, women were really first ones talking about it. We had to meet in secret, Antifa, death threats. I still get accused of, some kind of phobias. I find it funny, or right-wingness or whatever. But it's dangerous for women, very dangerous for women to invite men into spaces where we're vulnerable and pull our pants down. And women were getting, going up against men in boxing, getting brain injuries, and no one was saying boo about it except a bunch of feminists. I mean, no one was talking about it except a bunch of women. And then men kind of I'm very happy, any man who wants to talk about it, but they're kind of getting credit for being the pioneers they really weren't on the issue. I'll tell you that. Except for, Kelly J. Keene was key. She was, she was early. She was talking about it early on, certainly. But, Matt Walsh, all those people, all those right wingers had glommed onto it later. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So, no, that's okay. We talk about everything on the show, so that's cool. So the last topic, let's get into Karen Read. Like I said, as someone who doesn't have any knowledge on the case, so can you give me a rundown and the status of the case, what's going on now, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, Karen Read was a adjunct finance professor who was dating a police officer named John O'Keefe. They had gone out. It was the night before a second biggest storm in that area. They went out for drinks with friends, and they went from one bar to the next. And then after the bars closed, they went over to John O'Keefe's. Karen Read drove after drinking quite a bit, but she seems to be able to, all the information I have is that she can drink and drink and drink, and it doesn't really touch the sides with her. So she drove John O'Keefe over to their friend's house just to have a little, it wasn't even a get together, just kind of to hang out after the bars closed. And the home of the Alberts, and who were also detectives. And Karen Read was seen in front of the 34 Fairview, the home, Albert's home, their hand on the wheel, and she reversed into John O'Keefe. They obviously had a fight. John O'Keefe was carrying her drink from the bar, mixed drink. And she reversed into him, going up to speeds of 24 miles an hour, with her foot 75% down on the gas pedal, and left him to die in the snow in one of the worst blizzards. And instead of saying, so the next morning she wakes up her niece John O'Keefe was taking care of his sister, had died. His sister Kristen had died of brain cancer, and then Kristen's husband had died of a heart attack. So these two children, Kaylee and Patrick, were left totally orphaned, and he took them to care for them as he calls the fun uncle in his home. He was caring for Kaylee and Patrick. Patrick was over at a friend's house. Kaylee, she wakes up her niece, who I believe was like 13 years old, wakes her up at, I want to say 4:30 in the morning, and shakes her, and then leaves the room, and then comes back and says, I don't know where John was. I left him at the bar and he didn't come home. Do you have... So then Jen McCabe and all these other people. So instead of calling 911, she starts involving all these other people to come look for him. And she pretends to be hysterical and that she doesn't know where he is, but she also doesn't look for him. So she's calling around, and then she gets to the scene. She sees him in a pile of snow. She says, like a buffalo on the prairie. They go back to his home, and she meets his people out. She goes out looking for him. Then they go back to the house, to John O'Keefe's house. So after she runs him over, she doesn't go to her home. She goes to John O'Keefe's home and starts plotting out how she's going to get away with this before she wakes up the niece. So I believe she was up most of the night plotting how she was going to, cover this up. She also calls him multiple times, swearing at him, calling him a pervert, saying no one knows where you are, where she clearly just dropped him off and clipped him. So she didn't hit him like full on. She kind of clipped him. It's a very unusual run over, and that the defense exploited. So she went on, so they go back to the scene. First, they go to his house to look for him. And Karen Reed, it's a very important detail. It's not in everything detail, but it's important detail. John O'Keefe was a neat freak and insisted everyone take off their shoes when they went to their home. And Karen Reed goes into his home, runs into his home, and the friends are taking off their shoes because they know the rule. But Karen Reed runs ahead and doesn't take off her shoes, almost as if she knew he was dead and that rule of taking off the shoes didn't matter anymore. She's also telling people he's dead, he got hit by a plow, things like that. And then they go back to 34 Fairview, and no one sees John O'Keefe anywhere, but she sees him on the side of the lawn, in the dark corner of 34 Fairview lawn. She sees him under a pile of snow. No one else can see him. You could barely see in front of your face. It's snowing so hard. It's one of the worst storms in history of Massachusetts, second worst storm in Massachusetts history. But she sees him there, and she says, let me out, let me effing out of the car. And she runs on him, jumps on him. Everyone seems to know that he's passed. But Karen Reed has no fear of a corpse, jumps on him, lifts up his shirt, and starts writhing on him to warm him up, but never clears his airwaves or does 911 or does CPR or calls 911. The people with her call 911. The people with her help as she's running around screaming, pretending to be hysterical, and which gets her sectioned so she never has to answer questions to the police, strangely. So these are the kind of very loose facts of the case. And she's put on, so instead of taking responsibility, when she realized that her lawyer, David Yannetti, says that it was a terrible accident and she loved John O'Keefe, right? That's what he says to the press outside the courthouse. But quickly it changes to it was a conspiracy. He was beat up in the home by police officers who dumped him on their lawn, like seasoned detective would do, dump a body on their lawn to hide it, I guess. Doesn't make any sense. Beat him up with no defensive wounds, strangely. They just beat him up and left him to die. Then he got attacked by a dog. Because he was holding a glass. So it's everything about the wounds are a little bit unusual. Like he died from a terrible head wound. So he hit the hard earth, and then his have you ever seen someone with a nose job? The pressure gives you black eyes. So the pressure of it gave him black eyes. And they're like, look, he has black eyes. He got beat up. Look, he's got wounds from where the tail light was smashed. And then they start a police conspiracy. So they start an innocence fraud campaign with the help of a blogger named Aidan Carney to spin this story and this tale. And first they start blaming all these people and spinning the evidence and leaking grand jury information. So, and then they get a federal investigation into police corruption, right? So it's a very typical innocence fraud tactic. So it sounds good on the surface till you find out that what did this federal investigation find? Any corruption? No corruption, no conspiracy. Then they had an independent audit also done. The town paid a ridiculous amount of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to have an independent audit to look into Karen Read's arrest and the death of John O'Keefe. They had a few suggestions of how it could have been done better in a snowstorm, but they found no corruption or no framing of Karen Read. So there's been one federal investigation into this. Karen Read got with her contacts and her lawyer's contacts, and one independent audit. They found no, but she got with the help of a judge who was like another wing of the defense. She went on trial. The first trial, I thought, actually now looking back, the first DA, very dry, not fun to watch, but very dry, but very good. I thought DA got a hung jury. Second time, they allowed the entire town to come in front of the courthouse with signs, and they weren't specifically allowed to say free Karen Read, but they were allowed to wear pink, which is Karen Read's color, the free Karen Read color. And everyone knew why they were there. And they were screaming as the jury was deliberating. They were like, and as the verdict was coming down, they were like cheering. It came literally in the courthouse. And so I was the only one on the Karen Read is guilty side to say, I think she's going to get away with this. I'm very worried she's going to get away with this. I know innocence fraud cases. So this is the first pre-trial innocence fraud case that I've covered on my channel. My friend Martin Pribe, who covers innocence fraud in Chicago, says, hold on, can I just turn off my camera for a second? I just have to stretch out my leg. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Sure. Says that these happen all the time in Chicago. But this is the first one I've seen done here. And they raised over $1 million for her, and there's a lot of YouTube lawyers and grifters and people who've gotten very rich on T-shirts and YouTube channels spinning this case. And they hired, there's all sorts of things. She hired defense witnesses. Like one of the things that she likes to do, hire, like she hired these ARCA defense witnesses, and they introduced the first jury to them as that these ARCA witnesses were hired by the federal investigation. They couldn't say federal, but they said another entity, and were totally independent and not paid for by the defense, and that they could have been used by the prosecutor, but just using only the information gathered by the defense. They never asked the prosecution for anything for their investigation into this this murder. They determined that John O'Keefe's injuries couldn't have been caused by the car. Strangely, they only got the information from the defense, and they were totally independent. Well, it turns out that they were not independent; that they were getting paid by the defense. And in the second trial, we found out that they were talking to the defense attorneys via Signal app, which is Karen Read's preferred way of communicating. So it's a encrypted app, which she puts it on auto delete, so the messages get auto deleted. There's been a woman just got convicted of leaking for sat on the grand jury of leaking grand jury documents to Aidan Carney, the blogger.
Right, I heard this. I heard
via
about this.
friend.
This is very recent, right?
So all sorts of illegality was permitted. They sandbagged the prosecution. So if you don't want to get Brady violation, so the prosecution and the defense have to hand over all information pre-trial about their witnesses. And over again, the defense would violate the rules of the court and just say we just met these witnesses. We can't talk to them because they were hired by the federal investigation. We can't hand over any discovery because we were putting them on the stand. This is what the judge said. You're putting them on the stand, 2 witnesses you've never talked to. That's essentially it, Your Honor. We've never talked to them. Turns out totally untrue. Not only did they talking all the time, but they were paying for them, and they lied to the jury. So they could have gotten Karen Reed off on that. We could have actually gotten a conviction possibly without that information. That could have swayed some jurors, and we could have gotten a conviction the first time, but they lied to the court. And what happened is the judge just chewed them out. That was their sanction, and their punishment was these pointless voir dires. So the prosecutor got to ask questions, but they didn't have any information to ask the right questions before trial. So we had these voir dires of these, basically like questioning these witnesses before they went up. And this happened with so many of the defense witnesses. It was so dirty and criminal. And there's rumors that there might be some federal charges. I'm not convinced, coming down on Karen Reed for witness harassment. Aidan Carney has multiple counts of witness harassment, but they're so popular, Karen Reed and Aidan Carney in Massachusetts, it's really hard to think that they'll be ever convicted of anything. They're really above the law. They've become like folk heroes. And this is a pattern in Innocence Fraud. They make the cops into criminals, and they make the criminals into folk heroes. So that's sort of like so now they're being sued civilly by the O'Keefe family.
Right.
And I'm just continuing to stay on it. I'm not exactly sure why. I'm just sort of fascinating. It feels undone to me. And just the incredible unfairness of it. It was so criminal what I watched. Alan Jackson, he's a very famous defense lawyer, defended Kevin Spacey, but they used all sorts of dirty tricks and criminal stuff. And Karen Reed supporters are some of the most vicious, rabid supporters, very much like the West Memphis Three supporters or Stephen Avery supporters that you're going to meet. I would put them at some of the worst of the murderer groupies out there to come across. They are really, it's not like they don't want, it's interesting. They don't want any opposition. You know, I consider my channel pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but they don't want any opposition out there. Because they know, I think they know deep down that the truth is pretty powerful, you know, even on a small channel. But they don't want anyone else to speak but the innocence fraudsters. They only want one point of view out there, and they will harass you, insult you, dox, try to dox people, just be really just nasty. They're really a nasty bunch. A lot of them are criminals themselves who have been caught driving drunk themselves. So Karen Reed was acquitted of all the major charges, but convicted of driving under the influence. And the jury foreman was calling around before the verdict, looking to make deals and make money off of this. So they knew that if they acquitted her, that they could make money. It was the worst picked jury ever. There's also many problems in this case, but yeah. If they had a better judge, that would have been a big help. But this judge was like the worst. Another wing of the defense, really.
A few more quick questions before we wrap it up. Is there anything maybe any advice or tips or ideas you can give to like investigators or journalists or people on the spot or even people in the public to spot innocence fraud? Is that something that you can kind of pick up on? Or do you just have to do the research?
If you want to be spoon-fed, you'll always be fooled. So I'm actually doing, it's funny you should mention this. It's a really good question because I'm actually doing a Patreon episode for my Patreon people about this. I don't know if anyone's interested, but I figure it has to be out there somewhere. So, because I was fooled by West Memphis Three, Amanda Knox. I used to be fooled by these. So you have to ask yourself, when you look at a innocence fraud campaign, first of all, they lie. They lie a lot. If you don't think that these experts will lie, the Innocence Project will lie, they lie. They do lie. So do not go for appeals to authority. That is a big pitfall. Well, why would this, they like to use ex-FBI people, private investigators, lawyers as mouthpieces. Our legal system is decided by average people. It is not so complicated that you can't figure it out. You don't need any kind of great degrees to make a decision. The legal documents are easily read and easily accessible to anybody. Can figure these cases out just by reading the documents and looking at the evidence. That's why our juries decide these cases. So you don't need to be some kind of expert on anything, but you do have to ask yourself, when you look at these innocence campaigns for convicted killers or accused killers, what are they leaving out? And if you go to the actual court documents and make sure, and when you look online and there's only the defense documents out there, that's a red flag. When somehow the documents from the prosecution are kind of like hidden, it's like you're searching. All they are is like one defense document after the next. That's a little bit of a red flag. But find the prosecution documents, find the filings, find the original court transcripts if you can, and read as much as you can before you put your good name behind a killer and get duped. And especially before you give any money to any one of these people. It's so easy to say, well, this sounds good, and I'll share this. But most of the time, my experience, you're probably being played. I would say in these big cases of these choreographed, propagandized cases, you're being played by a psychopathic killer. And you have to also, I'd encourage people to think about the victims' family members. In the case of the West Memphis Three, they got a few of the victims' family members over to their side or to publicly endorse them. And so what is fraud? I mean, fraud is making something look like something it's not. So a lot of times there's like deeper stories we know behind how those parents became involved. They're troubled. They need money. They, they got duped by an expert who, guilted them. They guilt them. There's always more to the story under the surface. That's what I say. So any kind of fraud is making something look like something it's not. And I would say that cases of innocence fraud are no different. The point is to make something be easily digestible for the public on the surface. But when you get just under the surface, so look, if there's a claim of innocence, look at the actual documents and look if there might be a reason why, or has that claim been investigated by the courts, by our appeals courts? Huge injustices, and is it likely that all this unfairness happens to one convicted killer? Something so unfair happens over and over again to one convicted killer. Use your head. Yeah. And don't get spoon-fed. You have to do the work. You know, a little bit of work, just a little bit of work to go find the original documents. Go find the court documents. It's the most important thing. Don't take my word for it. I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Investigate it yourself. Look at the facts yourself.
Finally, so we talked about a lot of these different cases. We talked about how the media plays a big part. Obviously, the rise of social media, things like TikTok and all those things. It seems to be even more fuel on some of these fires. So where do you see innocence fraud evolving in the future, if any, if at all? And is there anything that the legal world can do about it to fight it, so to speak?
Well, it's a problem because these lawyers know they don't want to speak out. One lawyer spoke out kind of tentatively, John Lewin, who I've had on my show, about the Innocence Project, because there was a big case of fraud in the Southern California Innocence Project where a woman seduced a convicted killer to take responsibility for her client's murder. And she offered him the civil money to do it, and also was like sending him racy pictures and having a prison romance with this guy. It came out, this lawyer for the Innocence Project. And he spoke out about, innocence fraud, but he said, oh, it's not my friend the lawyer doing it at the Innocence Project, this Innocence Project, it's other Innocence Project. No, they're all doing it. They all work the same way. It's like, not this McDonald's,
Right.
not my McDonald's is doing it, right? They're all doing the same project. They're all making the same product. They're all doing the same techniques, the same stuff. There is not a wealth of guilty people, of innocent people wrongfully convicted. So they have to spin these narratives to keep grifting off of. And I think, you have to remember that the beginning of this, the Innocence Project was started by Barry Schecht and Neufeld. When Barry Schecht realized at the O.J. Simpson trial that nobody really understood DNA evidence and that he could manipulate DNA and make it seem like a much more sure case than it was. And I think that there's been all sorts of games played with DNA in cases and overstating the importance of it, or like I talked about in Stephen Avery's case, just a sudden appearance of a piece of DNA in the folder that never really got explored by the courts. So what happened in Stephen Avery's case, they just rubber stamped him out. They didn't look at any of the evidence up against the evidence that he was convicted of. They just said they had this very ambitious assistant prosecutor who said, let him out. And the court rubber stamped it. And then he got hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's taxpayer money. Your taxpayer dollars often are paying out these very guilty killers. And a lot of them have, not a lot, I would say, but many of them have reoffended. And when they reoffend, they don't say, oh, maybe they were guilty the first time around, we got a guilty killer out. They say, oh, no, they were just traumatized by all their time wrongfully convicted in prison. So they have you remember the Joe Rogan story, right? I mean, Joe Rogan had on, Joe Rogan's been pushing innocence fraud forever. He's deep into it. But he had on Sheldon Johnson, who they say was basically essentially excessively, he was guilty, but he was given an excessive sentence. But there's a reason why he was given an excessive sentence, because the judge said, if you do this again, I'm going to throw the book at you. You've been in front of my court and I've let you off 2 times. You come up, do this again, try to kill someone again, I'm going to throw the book at you. And he did the 3rd time round. That's why he got such a long sentence. And he came on the Joe Rogan show and he said, I learned in prison, I did all these classes, and we have to stop, racism, blah, 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 excessive sentencing, played the victim. He was a gang leader. And not 2 months after being on Joe Rogan, he was in the Bronx. His neighbors hear Sheldon Johnson's friend go, "Hey man, don't do it. I have kids," and 2 gunshots. And then he's on CCTV footage in all these different disguises. One of them a blonde wig and glasses, going in and out of the apartment. So, and Joe Rogan just laughed about it without his friend, Josh Dubin, all working to get this killer out of would-be killer. At that time, I think he was just an attempted murderer, out of prison early. This guy would still be alive. Excuse me for not remembering his name off the top of my head. I like to remember the victims' names at this time. It just, I'm having a little, but instead they say, they just laugh and say, "Oh, it was an unfortunate incident that happened after we had Sheldon Johnson on." But every couple of months, I think one of the biggest podcasts in the world, Joe Rogan Show, is pushing this narrative of innocence. And they've had Amanda Knox on more than, totally.
2 times. Yeah.
Times they've, I haven't fully investigated the cases that they put on, but I'm sure anyone could look at those cases. It doesn't take any kind of doesn't take any kind of background or anything special to just go find the court documents and go look at the original court documents up against their claims that they're making on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I bet you'll be it used to be a game I used to do with my friend who used to come on the podcast with me. She did the Marty Tankliff episode with me. I'd say, "Okay, here's the claim." I call her up and I go, "Here's the claim of innocence. This is what they say happened. What do you think happened? What do you really think the real story is?" And she would guess. And I said, "No, it's worse than that. They found a murder weapon. They found a blah, blah, blah. There was another guy who did it with him who's also in prison." They're always leaving something massive out. So you can make it a fun game. What they're leaving out is a lot.
Yeah. Exactly.
There is a connection between the Innocence Project and the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. Elizabeth Loftus has been pushing that, and she's a favorite expert of the Innocence Project. She's on the Innocence Project website, so she represents guilty predators, and she's pen pals with Jerry Sandusky. She's also testified. I watched her testify in the Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. I covered that from the courthouse, Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. Very much similar kind of claims. They expect you to believe something really improbable happened and trust the experts with this kind of narrative. Like the Innocence Project uses tunnel vision investigation by the cops, sloppy investigation, that the DA has to solve the crime so quickly, and doesn't have time to get it right. They have to, they have a quota and they have to meet their quota. Also, some kind of personal vendetta against the killer. There's always kangaroo court. Hysterical, mass hysteria in the town, et cetera, those kind of things. So yeah, there is a connection. It's very similar grift. So if you've read Ross Chait's book, The Witch Hunt Narrative, it's about innocence fraud with of around the daycare cases in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, okay.
Like McMartin's great book.
McMartin's, yeah.
McMartin's, and he's a tenured Brown professor. He's retired now, but he's really writing about all these innocence fraud cases around daycare cases in the 80s and 90s, capturing the Friedmans. There's another. Next time we'll talk about that, but yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for your time. Can you tell everyone watching and listening where they can find you, Roberta?
I hope I haven't bored you. Yeah, you
No,
can
this
find
was
me. You can find
wonderful.
me on. It's a lot. This is like really my like passion interest. You can find me on the Roberta Glass True Crime Report anywhere you can find podcasts. YouTube. I live stream every night, but Monday and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern. Um, where else? Patreon. Also, I have a Patreon account. You can find extra content there. All those places on X at Roberta Glass Pod. Those are thank you. Thanks for having a conversation with me.
No,
Appreciate it.
this was a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to bring you back. We'll have to do something on the hurricane, and yeah, we'll bring you back regardless. Though this was a great chat. I appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to pull you out, and we'll bring you back in a second. Okay, Roberta. So thank you so much for coming, and yeah, we'll have to have you back because this was a great talk. I learned a lot, and yeah, there's a lot of people interested in this kind of stuff, and I honestly think that this innocence fraud is a great topic for people to know and understand, especially when they're seeing these headlines of all these big cases coming out recently and in the past. So I do appreciate you coming on. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, so this is it for today, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Please check out the Divulgence podcast on YouTube. Please subscribe. We're trying to build up the channel. Greatly appreciate that. You can also check us out on X. Yeah, and if you guys have any ideas for guests, topics, anything like that, please pass it along to me. Definitely appreciate that. So everyone take care, be well, and stay safe.